Welcome, everyone, to another Sound Living Counseling Center Mental Health Talk. Today, our topic will be love languages and mental health. Before we get started, let's do some introductions. Let's start with Ashley Dean.
Hello, my name is Ashley. I'm an intern at Sound Living Counseling Center. I am in the clinical mental health program and working on my master's.
Okay, thank you. Miss Natasha.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natasha Christian. I am also an intern at Sound Living Counseling Center. I am working on my master's in student counseling and glad to be here.
Okay. I'm also another intern. My name is Alicia Wright. I am studying clinical mental health at Southern Adventist University. And I'm enjoying being here working with Sound Living Counseling Center and what we are doing here. And now we have introduction from Miss April Taylor.
Hi, so I'm April Taylor. Love being at Sound Living. I'm the executive director, the LPC, a whole bunch of other hats, but love teaching. Love this topic that we're going to talk about today. So I'm excited about that, excited to be here, excited about the series too. So welcome. I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you're listening.
So let's get talking about languages of relationships. You know, relationships, they come in so many different ways. We have our relationships with romantic, with our boyfriend, our girlfriends, you know, our husband and wives. We have relationships with our family, have relationship with our friends. We even have a relationship with, you know, our coworkers and our bosses in the work field. So relationships, they go so many different ways, you know. We kind of sometimes just think of our relationships with just someone we are here with romantically or even dating. So, you know, let's talk about that. What do you guys, you know, think about languages and language of relationships?
I think the language of the relationship really speaks to how you are as a person and how your language may interact or contradict with another person. So I think it's good to learn about what language that you have in relationships, whether it's romantic relationships, family, friends, work relationships, all types.
That's
Uh,
very good. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think with relationships that there's such a learning opportunity
Mhm.
um, to know more about who you are, regardless of if it's a friendship or romantic relationship. You learn about who you are. Um, for example, when I first came to Georgia, I acquired this friend, and I was used to being in Virginia, being the youngest grandchild, being the youngest in my family, and being spoiled. So sometimes I could be very demanding and not, or just assume that somebody's going to do something for me until she called me out one day. So I learned a lot about myself that, oh, you're not in Virginia. You need to, you know, change a little bit in this relationship, because that's not working. So I think, and if we know people's intention, like when we get to know our friends and get to know their intentions, we know when they are uh, being truthful to us and we get less offended, I guess, because we know that their intent is not to harm, but to hurt. So that's, what I've learned. I think they're very educational things to have relationships because if you're willing and open and introspective, you can learn a lot about who you are as a person and how you interact with others.
Very true. Very true. And it's definitely like relationships deal with how we interact with people, and they can teach us a lot. Also, how you were saying about ourselves, like internally, externally, so many different variables. Like, so like I'm curious, like, how can we connect, like, you know, the language of relationships with our mental health? Like, Mrs. Taylor, how do you think we can do that?
So I love that question. One of the reasons why we're talking about relationships is I don't know if I'm one of the few, but as a therapist, I do a lot of work with mental health, with depression, anxiety, and those kind of things. But I realize that our relationship have a big effect on our mental health. So if we're not doing well in our relationships, if we're not doing well with our children, with our spouses, with our families, then that has a huge effect on our mental health. So sometimes I'll pivot. I'll be working on anxiety, and then I'll check in and see how the family's going. And if it's not going well, I'll touch up with the family and get that relationship stable. And when those relationships get stable, guess what? The mental health gets better. And so there's a tie-in. I haven't figured out scientifically what the link is, but there's a link for sure. And so I love it. And that's why we've done a lot of mental health topics so far. And I'm excited to be talking about relationships because I think it brings a balance. When we deal with the relationships, it helps to balance our mental health as well.
So how do you think we should start right now with, just any one of us just trying to build that connection?
Well, I love the idea of, I think Miss Ashley kind of alluded to the 5 love language as she started talking about the language of relationships. When I say language, I'm talking about a whole lot of different languages and not just the 5 love languages, but we can start there. I think that's a good space to start because it applies not only to romantic relationships, but it applies to your relationship with your kids, with your parents, with anybody that you're trying to love. If you're struggling with loving somebody or they're struggling with loving you, the 5 love languages come in handy because they help us learn to love each other. So I think that would be a good place. And I thought about whether I would do a visual, but I think in this case, I'll just go ahead and describe the 5 love languages and then just remind you to think about, as you're listening, think about your love language and also think about the language of somebody you love or somebody you're trying to reach out to and trying to love. So I'm going to talk about them in no particular order. The first one, quality time. You like being together. For women, it's usually face-to-face, conversational, maybe over dinner or lunch or something. For men, it's shoulder to shoulder. So they might like being together, playing basketball or going fishing or just doing something with each other, watching a movie. So when you're in mixed company, kind of switching that up sometimes. So sometimes you're just doing something with them and sometimes you're doing lunch or you're doing, so make sure you kind of mix it up in mixed company. Acts of service, mowing the lawn, making the bed, washing the dishes, doing something for you, doing something to make you feel like somebody loves you because they did something for you. And the next one is words of affirmation, saying nice things, good job, way to go. Words of affirmation, people like to know why you like them or what they did well. They want to know kind of the details. They also like letters and cards and things kind of written out that detail how great you are or what you're doing well. Gifts, which is small tokens, big tokens, just things that little trinkets, somebody custom made, something personalized, something that says, I know you would like this. I was thinking of you. Is a gift person would like that. And I left out one, physical touch. Holding hands, touch, pats, hugs, being next to each other, sitting. Some people like to feel skin to skin. That's physical touch. So when you're thinking about yourself or thinking about somebody you love, what do you guys, since I'm talking to you guys, what is your love language? We'll kind of do it that way.
Mine is definitely words of affirmation, definitely receiving and giving.
Okay. So for both, you like receiving and giving words of affirmation. Okay. Yes. What about you, Miss Ashley?
I actually did look at my love languages recently, and the way they did it, they showed you the love language you have is the one you preferred, and then they show all the other ones and how that kind of ties into what you like as well. So my preferred one is quality time, and I could see that aspect. I like to spend time with people. I like to be able to connect with others, and I can also see how the others tie into like what I like for relationships with me.
Okay. And Miss Natasha?
Mine is also quality time. That's my first one, but my second one is very, very close, and it's physical touch.
Okay.
I'm a person that grew up under my mom, always set up under her, so I love the hugs, I love the closeness, I love all of that. So yes, they are mine.
Okay, and mine is gifts, which is sometimes the odd one because people kind of look at gifts, people kind of strange. And I love what Ashley just said about how they tie into the other things. So I see quality time and physical touch and acts of service and words of affirmation as gifts. So if you give me any of those things, I see them as a gift and I cherish them. So I've learned to appreciate that, though initially I didn't appreciate, my husband's is quality time and acts of service. And I didn't appreciate it much because it wasn't gifts. But now I see those things as gifts to me. So I've kind of transitioned a little bit. So I appreciate it a lot more. And so whether you're in a love relationship or whether you're dealing with a kid, let's say one of my grandbabies, she's 7. Oh my gosh, physical touch has got to be her love language. She will sit on my lap, his lap. You know, she just has to be touched and cuddled and loved on, and she loves it. The other one, I would think maybe words of affirmation or quality. No, hers is quality time first, and then maybe words of affirmation. But learning their love languages helps us love them. And then appreciate it. The one thing about love languages is if somebody is loving you in a language that's not your own, learn to appreciate it as love. It's still love. It just may not be in your own language, but they're still trying to love you. And so that was my takeaway. And once I learned that, it made all the difference in the world. Because, you know, we want what we want, how we want it. But what if we get in love and it just doesn't look like how we wanted it, but it's still love? So that's helped me a lot. And I share that with a lot of clients, and it kind of is a light bulb moment for them sometimes because their spouse is trying to love them or their loved ones are trying to love them, but they don't recognize it as love. So what's your feedback or questions or comments about that?
I actually have an example of that. I had a friend years ago that her husband would give her all these wonderful, flowers and teddy bears and all this type of stuff. And she was like, Natasha, he doesn't tell me like on a regular, he loves me, or, you know, so she wanted those words of affirmation or things that she was doing well, and he was giving her gifts. So I could see the disconnect there. And I recognized that then because I knew about the love language, and I shared that with her. But I think it's important to know, especially in a romantic relationship, what your the partner, what their love language is, how they receive love. So that was just kind of interesting, like, wow, they're just missing each other like that. And then I also had a family member who I didn't believe liked us a whole lot, but it's because like we didn't give gifts, and that was her love language. We just took you out for your birthday or something like that. We didn't go out and buy an extravagant gift and give it to you. So that made me understand her better and to do better in that area.
That's awesome. Any other comments?
I love how Natasha brings like in like her family member, because it's just like I was thinking of like my brother's relationship with me and how, like, you know, for me, I love like hearing like nice compliments or like sweet words, and I would do the same thing to my brother. But he gets so overwhelmed with that. I'm like, well, that's just how I love. And so for him, like, you know, acts of service and just quality time, and just, you know, we don't have to be talking, just sitting next to each other. For him, that's how, you know, he accepts love. And it was really hard for me, you know, to understand that until I heard and learned what his love language was and how to love him back and how he would love me back, because I was feeling like he didn't love me. You know, that is hard. And so like it also goes with your mental health, in the sense that, you know, I was feeling like really like sad and depressed and like distant from my brother, but then understanding where he's like, what his love language is, helped our relationship and helped me feel a little better that, you know, it wasn't the fact that he didn't love me, he just loves me in a different way. So I like, you know, you bringing in the family part, because we can definitely use it in our relationships.
And I agree with that. Looking at what the love languages of your family members and also someone really close to you can be helpful. For example, my cousin, I thought her love language was physical touch. But when we actually sat down and talked about it, she was like, no, please don't touch me. And I discovered that her actual love language was the affirmation. So I started doing that more with her, just telling her like, hey, you look very nice today. I like what you did with your hair. I like what you did with this. Just give her that little boost.
It's cool.
So Ms. Taylor, do you have any tips for, you know, any of our viewers basically on how we can learn about our counterparts like love languages? Would you like recommend we just go out and do the quiz, or sit down and talk, or?
So I love the book first, The 5 Love Languages, And he's written it for families, he's written it for couples, he's written books for even for special needs kids, which I think is kind of cool. So he's written a lot of different versions of the 5 love languages. So I definitely recommend the book. And then there are online tests and online assessments that you can do. And there are also videos and stuff on YouTube you can kind of look at to learn more about it. So I like doing that first and doing the assessment and then having the conversation with the family members. So that's kind of the order that I would recommend, like either reading the book or doing the assessment and then talking about it. And then what do you guys, I also want to talk about love and respect. And so just like you guys, I'm glad you brought in the whole family, because I kind of, when I thought about this topic, I was kind of thinking about in love relationships, but I definitely deal with families and couples and, you know, kids and parents and all the time. So love and respect is another topic that I really like to talk about. And I want to show a little graphic of that one because I think it'll be fun. It's such a great visual, and it usually helps people kind of get on track when they see it. So I'm going to try to go to that and share screen, and I'll let you guys, let's see, I think I have it ready. I was going to say I'll let you talk, but I got it ready, but I think I got it. So this is the book, Love and Respect and the 5 Love Languages book. And see if I can go to the next slide. And that's the love languages. But this is the graphic I wanted to show you about the love and respect. Without love, she acts without respect. And without respect, he acts without love. And that's what Dr. Emerson Eggerichs calls the crazy cycle. And I love this because a lot of couples who are off track find themselves where she is feeling unloved and he is feeling disrespected. And then without that, it just continues and it just repeats this cycle. When I show them this visual, which I created, I love the book, but I made the visual just because I'm a programmer and I love visual things. So it just helps me to see a flow chart. And I show this to my clients and they're just like, yes, I get it. Like they see it and they can see the cycle they're in. I show them that it's called a crazy cycle and they just like get it. Even kids and parents. So with the kids, without love, the kids act without respect. And when they act without respect, we act without love. And then that cycle repeats. But then I ask them, like, do you want it? They recognize the cycle. They say they're on the cycle. I ask them, do they want to get off? And they go, yes. And so then I show them how to get off. And this is, again, Dr. Emerson Eggerichs. I love his work because it is faith-based. He bases it on Ephesians 5:33, where the Bible says, husbands, see that you love your wives. Wives, see that you love your husband. Wives, see that you respect your husbands. And so when we learn to love and respect, we can get back on track. And then he's also written his stuff for, the original was written for couples, but he does write for love and respect for families as well. So to get off with love, she acts with respect. And with respect, he acts with love. And so that cycle starts to repeat. And so, and it's called the energizing cycle, which is really neat. But why I'm so passionate about this teaching is that I learned to get off the crazy cycle before I ever read the book, which is kind of cool because I read the book, the Bible, and started to respect my husband, and we got off the crazy cycle. So, and then I started doing it with my kids and started loving them when they were acting disrespectful, and then we could kind of get off the cycle too. So, so I love showing that graphic so we can kind of get a visual of it. Have you guys seen that before, or was that helpful to kind of see?
I feel like I've seen that graphic before, and it is very helpful to think about like how, you know, how love and respect kind of go hand in hand, and without one, you don't have the other.
Right.
And it seems kind of simple, but I know it's not. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, as a woman, I know I like control and I like to run things and, you know, stuff like that. And it could be seen as disrespectful to a man. You know what I'm saying? So it seems like, okay, if I give respect, he'll give love. It seems as simple as that, but there's so many things that it's underlying that you have to deal with internally.
And I'll jump in and say something to that. So it is a deep teaching, and it's not, it seems very simple, and I love the simplicity of it, which is one of the reasons I share it, but it is deep. So we have to first recognize what's being disrespectful. So sometimes I have a lot of women who are like, not like I was blatantly disrespectful, so it was easy for me to see. So like I'm blatantly disrespectful, so I need to be more respectful. That was easy. But if you're not blatantly disrespectful, you still can be disrespectful to him. Like he still could feel disregarded, or he could feel like you don't like him, or you don't put him first, or you don't respect his opinions, or you're not listening to him. All those things feel very disrespectful to men. And I also tell parents, like if you have a male child, I remind parents that your male child needs as much respect as your husband does. He feels it even at 15 or 16 or 4. You know, they need respect. And so it's hilarious when I start teaching moms to respect their male children, like listen to them and hear what they're trying to say, like hear them out and don't cut them off because they're kids, you know, and then the kids start thriving because they feel respected. Were you going to add something, Miss Ashley?
No, not at this moment.
Okay, I was just checking in. But anyway, so I like to share that with couples and with families. I do it, like I said, I love the fact that he wrote Love and Respect for Families too, because it's so the families get off track. Even if I've got like a granddaughter or a female child, if she's disrespectful, I'm going to feel that. And my reaction to disrespect is harsh. It does not feel loving. So we on the crazy cycle real quick. But if I remember that that child, when she's being disrespectful, needs love, and I come at her in a loving way, we can get off the cycle real quick too. And like you said, Natasha, it's not as simple as it sounds, but it's actually doable.
And you know, Miss April, I'm hearing you talk, and I totally agree with you. But I'm not in a relationship. I can hear women in my head saying, you know, like that sounds like submission. You know what I'm saying? So what would you say about that? Because, you know, knowing women, it's like, I'm not doing that. My husband, you know, like the neck roll thing, you know, what would you say about that? Because it may be very foreign what you're talking about to some people in Facebook land.
So first, I'll say you're very intuitive if you think it sounds like submission, because it is. And I would not back off of it because I don't. And that's because I really believe in the traditional view of marriage. So I definitely teach from that perspective, especially when we're dealing with healthy situations. We do want to clarify that most of this today is healthy situations. Next week, we're going to pivot and talk about when we're in an unhealthy situation. But right now, we're talking about healthy situations. So men, so the way I explain it to women to help them embrace it is that I'll ask the young lady, like, do you feel like you need to be cherished and valued and loved and like a princess or a queen? And most women nod and say, yes, that's how I feel and that's what I want. I'm like, okay. So if that's what you need, can you imagine what he might need? He wants to feel like a king. He wants to be liked. He wants to be respected. He wants to be valued, and he wants to be the king of the castle. And then they kind of, give me a second look with that. But if you're a queen, that makes him a king, right? Or vice versa. If he's a king, that makes you a queen. So if you treat him like a king, he's going to treat you like a queen. So you really have to think about what it is that you want. And most women can resonate with the king, queen image better than the submission thing. They want to be valued and cherished and wear a crown. Sometimes I have a crown and I put it on, okay? And my husband lets me wear it. I mean, honestly, I do. I'm not at the office, so I can't do it today. But literally, I'll just put it on sometimes because I know I'm royalty. And I remind women that if we wanted to be treated like royalty, then we have to treat him like a king. We can expect him to treat us and cherish us and nourish us and nurture us and take care of everything we need, but we don't have to do any of that for him. And so that's kind of how I pivot a little bit. And most women kind of can go with that. Other questions or comments regarding that? I'm trying to watch Facebook too, because I think we have an audience today. So, which is kind of great.
Actually, I love Natasha's question, because okay, so on my on my perspective, I have a boyfriend, right, who does not treat me with respect, right? So it's just it's hard to treat someone else with respect who doesn't treat you with someone with respect. So how do you go from that perspective if you want the respect and you're treating someone with respect, but you're not getting the respect back?
So that's why I sit down with women and we kind of talk about like, now why are we in that relationship and we feel like you don't respect us, first of all. But with that, if we're in a relationship and that's what we want to be, I think, and this is what happened with my husband and I, we were on the crazy cycle for a long 10 years, by the way. So I was being very disrespectful and I did not feel the love. And most people know he's wonderful and they know him as being wonderful. But when we were on this crazy cycle, it was hard for me too. Like I wasn't feeling it. Okay. But when I started to respect him, it changed. So I teach that respect comes from the position. Like you're in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship now. So you've chosen him to be your boyfriend. And if you marry him, then you chose him to be your husband. And so once we choose him, we respect that position because you put him in that position. And a lot of women are kind of like, they're taken back by that, but you didn't have to make him your husband. And once you do, you respect the fact that he is your husband. And that's what God asked us to do. So God, you know, I teach the umbrella approach. So it's God the Father, Jesus, our husbands, us, and then our children. So that's kind of the umbrella. And so we're under the safety of that umbrella. And so God tells us to submit to our own husbands. And when we do, God is going to take care of us because we're under that authority. So he's got us. And so that's the only thing he asks women to do. I tell women to kind of look in the Bible and find something else that he tells wives to do. And they start flipping, and he says, wives submit. Wives submit to your own husband. That's all he tells us to do as wives. Kind of interesting. And in Ephesians 5, he does say, love your, Titus 2, he does says, love your husbands. But that's where, but how do we love? And how do we submit? To wives, you know, we submit by respecting our husbands. Husbands submit by loving their wives because we need love. And it's not natural to the husband. Just like respect is not natural to the wives. It's not natural. That's why we keep bucking. And we're scared too. In 2020, we're afraid, right? That's the real question. We're afraid. And we're afraid because we don't know what's going to happen. What if I submit to him? What's going to happen? What can he do to me? What is he going to make me do? What am I exposing myself to? But remember, we're under the umbrella of God's safety. If we do what God calls us to do, then God is going to take care of us. Other questions about that? You know, we can go all day with this one, I'm sure.
I'm gonna tell you, that's some good advice there, Miss April. Hopefully we can take it further in our lives and in our relationships, you know. But I don't have any questions. It's just very interesting to see. I grew up with that perspective, but it's just interesting to see it in motion or in action, you know what I'm saying? So, and seeing it work. So, I don't know what to say.
I do have a question.
Yes, Miss Ashley.
So, how do you talk to your significant other or your boyfriend about love and respect when you feel like you're giving him this love and respect, but he's not really reciprocating?
So that's why I like the book Love and Respect by Dr. Emerson Eckridge, the one that I talked about at the beginning. He is so awesome. He and his wife, Sarah, write the book together, and they write it from the male and the female perspective. They talk about blue sunglasses and pink sunglasses. So they do gender differences and things. And so he's so funny and so lively, and so he connects well with people. I recommend couples read it together. So if you feel like you're in this situation and you don't know how to explain it to your husband, read the book with him, or read the book with your boyfriend, or go out and watch the videos. Dr. Emerson Eckridge has videos. And so you can watch the videos and then have a conversation about it. And so it's a good tool. And I love that I learned it the hard way, and it was like trial and error, and I just had to learn it and keep trying and keep trying. Then when I read in the book, I'm like, oh, this makes it easy for me to explain to somebody. Here, read this book. I just tell people to read the book. And so then it makes more sense. But he does a fantastic job, he and his family, of teaching this system. And, you know, a spouse, I mean, it's so lighthearted and funny. And he talks about peppering the eggs and just certain different things. And it's just so hilarious. Like he didn't like pepper on his eggs, and his wife, you know, if you cook scrambled eggs, you're gonna put salt and pepper. And he's like, don't pepper my eggs. Well, it's disrespectful because I said I don't like pepper on my eggs. Well, we're laughing, and we laugh about that, but he felt disrespected because she kept peppering his eggs. And then we're kind of like, whoa. And he talks about things like Aretha Franklin sings R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Well, that was actually written by Otis Redding, not by Aretha Franklin, because men need respect. And so Otis Redding wrote the song originally, but it caught on with Aretha. So he does that kind of stuff, and see how that's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And so guys, of course, you're speaking his language. So he's going to pay attention because he wants respect, even if he can't say it. So he'll stay tuned because of that. And then he'll learn how to love her. And so Sarah teaches how we need to be loved and cherished and valued, and how that's so important to us. And so she kind of helps him, guys understand that from a female perspective.
Okay.
Other questions about that? Facebook land questions?
Natasha, did you have a question? Looked like you were about to say something.
I do. So I think my question was, and I know that you were talking about the umbrella. So I guess it goes under the umbrella when a man doesn't take, women kind of want men to take charge, even though we still want control. It's kind of like an oxymoron. But what if they try to give that respect and allow them to have that control, take charge, with us respecting him? It seems as if it's going to be, what happens? How does that go? Because that's a lot. A lot of times men don't want to make decisions. They, lean on their wives or the girlfriends and make those decisions and stuff like that. And that can be a bit frustrating. How do you deal with that under that umbrella?
So that's a great question. That's probably one of the number one questions I have, and probably my question too. I wanted my husband to be the leader. Matter of fact, I would go to church and I would pray for him to be the spiritual leader in the home, which said he wasn't, first of all. So I don't recommend you doing that at church. That's not probably a good thing. But I said it out loud at church. Okay, so that's what I prayed for. And I have that now, by the way, praise the Lord. So what I did was step out of the lane, because I was in the lane, full out. And when I stepped out, either one or two things going to happen. Either your husband's going to step up, in my case, he did, or God's going to step up. But you're not going to be in the lane anymore. And so when I stepped out of the lane, he pulled in, and then I asked him, because now we talk about stuff like this. We've been married for 32 years, so we have these conversations. And so now I'm like, so what happened? Like, why didn't you step up and why didn't you lead? He said, I'm a gentleman. You had the reins. I wasn't going to take them. I allowed you to step away and give them to me. But as long as I had the reins, he didn't try to lead. And so a lot of guys are waiting to step up. The other thing about guys is guys have wisdom. God have implanted wisdom in guys that he has not implanted into us. Now we have intuition. So we have that gut feeling, and we all have it. We have it, we exercise it, we feel it, right? And I'm a wise person, and we all have wisdom because God gives us all wisdom. But he gives guys a certain wisdom for the relationship, that if we trust that and allow him to lead, he can take care of us. And so I had to learn to let him, to allow him to lead me, to allow him to run our home, and to trust his leadership, to trust his wisdom. And I'm the kind of person that God speaks to. So like he tells me stuff. He told me to go build a counseling center on a piece of property we have. And my husband was like, that's in the hood. It's not going to work. Like you can't put it there. And I'm like, but God told me. And guess what we did? We didn't go there. Because I don't know why I felt like God told me, and I still feel like he told me to put it there, but I didn't put the counseling center on that particular property. I put it where it is now, which is a really nice place, and it's thriving, it's working, it worked. So that's an example. So when we hear from God ourselves, that does get a little confusing, but I had to remember that God told me to submit. He didn't tell me why it's here from God. He didn't say that. He said submit. So I submitted, and that's why we're where we are. And not that we don't hear from God. I don't want to confuse that. We do hear from God, and we're allowed to hear from God. But the way I see it is that we both have a vote. We're in a democracy. We get ready to have an election. So we both have a vote. And so I tell him how I feel about every single thing. He knows how I feel. If he allows me to do what I feel, that's fine. We go my way. If he feels a certain different way, I go with him. I always defer to his vote, because his vote is just a little weightier than mine. So that's kind of how I see it. And it helps a lot. Because if we think about it, about 90% of the time I get my way anyway. And so that 10% when I have to cave, really, is that hard? And with most wives, I think it's kind of statistics like that, but we just don't want to admit it. Other comments, questions about that?
When you use the word step out of the lane, what do you exactly mean when you say step out of the lane? Because I mean, I could easily say I'm going to make the decisions. I'm saying hey, decide on this.
Well, when I say step out of the lane, I literally was in the lane. So I was larger than charge. It was my way or the highway. If it wasn't my way, I threw a fit. So I was in the lane and it was really bad. Okay, I'm just being honest. But when I tell other women to step out of the lane, don't make the decision, defer to him. And maybe let no decision be made because you didn't make it. And just kind of okay, we didn't do anything for a little while until he steps up and then we do something. Or, so are you saying, a lot of times, and this happened with us early on, so are you, by not making a decision, are you saying that you want me to make the decision? And if he says yes, make the decision. But that's a decision. He decided to let you make the decision. He's still in charge. If it's for instance, with our finances, he is in charge of the finances. Because if I pay the bills, I pay them all on the first of the month so I can get it over with. Well, if we don't have enough money to last to the end of the month, I'll kind of mess up the budget that way. But he does the finances, but he'll tell me when to write the checks. So we're kind of doing it together. And I'm writing when he says write them. I don't write them when I want to write them, like at the first of the month. I write them when he says write them. So we, but he's still leading that. So if he decides that you get to choose the restaurant. But he decided to let you choose it. Does that make sense a little bit? When he doesn't make a decision, say, are you saying you want me to decide? Okay, and then decide, but you're still asking him. And that'll encourage him. Because most of the time, Alicia, the guys are in a position of, they're used to us deciding, and we're happy when we're deciding, and they want us to be happy, so they just let us decide. Right? And so when we really start to change and try to let them take the lead and let them decide, they're not used to that because they've not seen that before. Sometimes. So it's that kind of thing in some cases. And we could do more detail. I kind of tease it out and say, okay, what's the example? And and I'll let the lady explain, and then I'll tell her how to and I do classes on this, by the way. I actually teach a class called Let's Talk About Marriage that I do for married and single women. And I want to do it via Zoom. Maybe we'll do that coming up soon, but it's a series that we do weekly. A Bible study format. We study the scriptures and then we come back and talk about the scriptures. And so I think that explains it a lot better than me just kind of saying, do this. Other questions, comments?
Okay, so in the interest of time, I want to make sure we all, get the gist. What is the biggest takeaway you want, us to take away from this talk?
So just have an open mind about learning to love each other, learning the love languages, learning to respect each other, that we can learn something new about ourselves and about our spouses. Just being open to making a few simple changes. I love how Natasha called it simple because that's my specialty. I make everything simple. So a few simple changes can make a big difference in your relationships. And so, but you have to be willing to make those changes. And one of the things about Sound Living is I specialize in dealing with the woman. And so then I have two guys who deal with the guys, and I have two young ladies who deal with the children and the adolescents. So we cover the whole family. And I do a lot of family counseling as well and couples counseling. So I do women, families, and couples. And then the other people do the guys and the kids. And that way we cover everybody. But because we do it that way, we kind of take care of everybody at the same time, if that makes sense. So I hold women accountable. I literally will call you out and I will say, okay, when you get to glory, is God going to ask you about him? Or is God going to ask you about you? And so that's the kind of takeaway I would like for women to just really realize that we, especially as Christian women, have some accountability to what God calls us to do.
Thank you.
I'm sorry if you hear some background noise. I do apologize. But I have one last question. So, what if they are not believers? How do you handle that situation?
So that's a great question. So at Sound Living, we are definitely open to people who believe and who don't believe. And we try to be very respectful of whatever position you're in. So if you're not a believer and you don't want to hear from a biblical perspective, we try to honor that because we honor God. We try to honor that. But what happens is we still teach the same concepts without the biblical scriptures. So we may talk about, I had a couple who were particularly not Christian, and I taught them love and respect. And I kind of left the Bible verses out, and they really were able to embrace it. So I still kind of teach the same concepts without the scriptures and without the references because they work. And God works whether they're a believer or not. He's still God and he still takes care of people. So I'm respectful that you don't want it from a biblical perspective. And I try very, very hard to honor that. Our whole team does. But we still teach what we teach, and we still try to help you if you're open and willing to learn. So. Any other comments? Go ahead.
I was just saying thank you for everything. Thank you for your time. And I was just thinking, ladies, any other questions as you were asking before we close?
Well, great job, Miss Alicia, for letting the Lord lead you today. I know you were having a little strain, but you did super great. Look at him. And thank you, ladies, for joining us. And let's talk about what we're going to do next week. I'll do that real quick. We're going to do something very different for Sound Living. Usually we do this kind of fluff. Like I love to talk about happy relationships and this kind of stuff. But we're going to talk about domestic violence, narcissism, gaslighting, the whole nine, because we need to talk about it. We really need to go there, and we're seeing it a lot with COVID, so we just really need to have that conversation. So join us next Tuesday at 12 noon for domestic violence and narcissism. And so thank you everybody for coming, and we hope to see you next week. Thank you, Miss Alicia, you did great.
Thanks.